Back again for another episode of She-Hulk. I really like this show. It's actually, I find it funny, and I'm realizing now I would kind of like to see more comedy set in the MCU. I do like the more serious, toned down kind of stories that we've seen from the MCU so far. You know, from beginning from Iron Man to the much more horror kind of aesthetic from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. But we had I Am Groot recently, which is a much more kind-hearted kid show, although I don't really see that as part of the MCU, which I understand that it is, but I find it more detached from the MCU than What If is. And What If, just to be clear, I understand is very tied to the MCU, but it kind of isn't. I was expecting that show to have a much more involved presence with Phase 4, and that just didn't end up happening. And you look at things like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which definitely had some sort of inspirational components, I guess, from What If, you know, from Sinister Strange and Captain Carter and all that stuff. But even those characters were different than the characters that were in What If. So I see What If as like a separate thing that's not even necessary for the overall MCU. And I see I Am Groot as even more so. She-Hulk, on the other hand, very much entrenched in the MCU. And we see that each episode. There's definitely a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of tie-ins and references. And I see this as a huge contrast to Moon Knight. And Moon Knight was a much more serious show, and it stood on its own. I think the only reference to the MCU in that show, aside from, I think, a poster on a bus or something like that, was the mention of the ancestral plane. Otherwise, that show just stood on its own and could have been completely separate from the MCU. And maybe that was a good thing. I think the show kind of excelled at that. It didn't rely on the MCU as a crutch, and it was its own show. She-Hulk is the exact opposite of Moon Knight, I think, in the best ways possible. But just to recap, we have a podcast here on YouTube called Hit Pause MCU, where we talk about Marvel Cinematic Universe, or in this case, the multiverse now. But we haven't been able to get together as often as I'd like. We still haven't really talked about Miss Marvel fully, and we're in the middle of She-Hulk. So I can't really get my thoughts out per episode until we do the podcast, and by the time that happens, sometimes the series is already over, and we're talking about the series as a whole. So I'm taking a different approach now and just rewatching episodes, since I'm not able to record my live reactions because I view the shows on my own time with other people. I sort of set time aside every week in order to do that, and I can't record myself doing that, so I just do a rewatch mostly to talk about my thoughts on what I've seen through that episode, and maybe catch stuff that I missed during my first viewing, since maybe I wasn't focused, I was talking to somebody during the scene. So this is a good way to refresh my memory, get some additional context, and just give my overall thoughts about the show without the knowledge of what's coming up ahead. So I'm not talking about an episode as if I'm trying to remember what my thoughts were before knowing what happens in the next episode. So I try to record these before a new episode is out, or I'm able to watch a new episode. And now they're being put onto YouTube as a new series, which I couldn't think of a good name for. This is sort of our Hit Pause series, like it's a spin-off kind of thing. Yes, the intention is to make Hit Pause separate categories. And because our hosts really like the MCU and we want to talk about the MCU, we made Hit Pause MCU. So maybe we'll do this for other shows. Right now we're doing it for She-Hulk. So it's called Hit Pause Reviews, and this current run is for She-Hulk. Makes sense, right? Anyways, let's start the episode. I can't remember what my thoughts were that I wanted to get out on this because I'm kind of late to recording this. So let's just hit record. While we got the opening crawl here, let me just mention that when I was recording for the last video, I was asking the Department of Damage Control, the prison, where the specific location of that was. It seems, based on what I looked up online, because I don't think it's explicitly mentioned in the shows, it is set in California. So that means the clandestine that were captured by the Department of Damage Control in New Jersey in Miss Marvel were somehow transported to California and didn't escape during that time until they were actually in damage control, and then they were able to escape. I don't understand. I love this part because you go into the comments of any project from Phase 4 or even since Captain Marvel online, and you see those exact comments.
This is absolutely ridiculous. I am incredibly upset. What kind of office doesn't have any Red Bull?
I am incredibly upset. What kind of office doesn't have any Red Bull? I did not catch that the first time. I think people are looking at... I didn't dive too far into online comments, but I think people were like sort of questioning why Megan Thee Stallion, why is it random celebrity in the show. I listened to some behind the scenes stuff and interviews, and it seems like there's a reason for that. Not like a big reason for the MCU. It just makes sense production wise and who's working on the show. Just a natural. I'm gonna pause it here so I can think about what I'm trying to say. Just sort of like a natural working relationship, or just, you know, Megan Thee Stallion's a fan of the MCU. People on the show have worked with her. Considering that the show is a self-referential comedy, also that Tatiana Maslany is apparently a really big fan of Megan Thee Stallion. I don't think that's really something that needs to be complained about or thought too much on. I think it makes sense for the show. So I don't know, just get over it, I guess. Let's back it up here because this is an important scene with Wong. I don't really get Wong's, and again, I'm going to pause so I can think. I don't really get Wong's argument. He required a worthy opponent in his training to become Sorcerer Supreme. Shang-Chi was set after the blip. Wong was established as Sorcerer Supreme, I think, during the blip, or maybe like right after. I don't know. Like, he's already Sorcerer Supreme at that point. So I don't know if he's bullshitting or what the process for Sorcerer Supreme actually is. Or did he become Sorcerer Supreme after that fight? Like, that was his final challenge or something? I have a feeling that answer is not going to be expanded upon at any point in the rest of the multiverse saga. So this is very much a side story that is completely meaningless to the show in the overall picture. So a lot of people are questioning, like, why? Why do we have this? And I understand that. I think it's a funny side story, so I enjoyed it. But maybe I'll get into that later. Does everybody have a Surface laptop in this show? I love that he has a Cybertruck, and he used it to park in a handicapped parking spot. I love how people were assuming that he was talking about people in the Thunderbolts, and I correctly stated, no, this is just a joke. He's actually committed to a relationship with 7 people.
Now the library is more than just a quiet place to shift someone.
Instead
I
of
love that
toilet
joke.
wine, prisoners.
And here we see like a good look at the Abomination now, and his new form is very different from the Incredible Hulk. Also, canonically, he was also stuck in a cryo freezer something.
If you endanger an operation, or if anyone gets hurt, I'll reassign you to Barrow, Alaska, and you'll spend the rest of your years pulling the night shift guarding Blonsky's cryo cell.
And then I guess got moved here when the Department of Damage Control became a thing. And so he's been transported a few times too.
They want Blonsky on the team.
The Abomination.
They really don't like when you call him
What
that.
about the Harlem incident?
They want him exonerated, released, and then added to the roster. Blonsky's in custody in General Ross's sector.
So on the council's orders, we have to send one of our people down to General Ross to ask for Blonsky, who we don't even want.
Exactly.
I love this scene.
I must depart.
Like, peace out. Because what are you really gonna do? He's the Sorcerer Supreme. He can just teleport anywhere. He's also, I don't think he's American. He's from Comertage. I had to hit record again, so I don't know if my previous thing got recorded. I love how Wong leaves the area. I'm just gonna pause here because this is also an important scene I want to talk about. So Wong is just like, I'm out, because he's the Sorcerer Supreme. What are you really gonna do? So you can just teleport anywhere. I also don't know if Wong's has an American citizenship, because it's interesting once you think about it, because he teleports from Comertage to the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York, and he just lives there. That's where he currently resides. And so what if you're convicting him of a criminal offense like the escape of a prisoner? Has anybody actually went up to the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York and like banged on his door and said, "Hey, you're under arrest"? I'm assuming there's like magic involved and keeping people away. But yeah, again, he's the Sorcerer Supreme. What are you really gonna do? But yeah, Wong is a criminal in the MCU, and apparently above the law. So it's something I don't think anybody's really talking about.
God, Dennis Bukowski.
Oh, yeah, no, you're gonna need that.
Connecting the A and B story? Nice.
That's definitely a fourth wall break I didn't catch
I
the
killed
first
him in
time I
my
watched
head
this
several
episode,
times,
but I
convinced
love it.
That she had a
I think we're getting a peek into what the rest of the show is going to be. Different court cases involving different characters in the MCU, both that we've met before are going to be newly introduced in the show. So again, we're going to see Abomination again as Abomination, probably in Thunderbolts.
When we come back, She-Hulk shares her diet and exercise secrets.
I'm sorry, what?
So this is kind of a reference to female actors in the MCU who go into interviews like this, and they're always asked these types of questions. What are your diet and exercise tips? Compared to all the male counterparts that don't get asked stupid questions like that.
Scarlett, to get into the shape of Black Widow, did you have anything special to do in terms of the diet?
Like, how come you get like the really interesting like existential question and I get the like rabbit food question?
And here we see the introduction to the Wrecking Crew.
Oh, wait.
I love that realization. Oh wait, I'm a superhero. And the Wrecking Crew is just as stupid in the MCU as they are in the comics. The guy with the helmet is just like headbanging. That's all he's doing. So somebody wants her blood. The question is who? There are some candidates. I am not going to go over the post-credit scene. Again, this is a comedy. It's fine. I'm not really focused on it. A lot of people are talking about it, and it seems like those people that I brought up before and this show has brought up at the beginning of the episode are complaining about how that kind of scene ruins the MCU and what happened to the MCU, and like Stan Lee would be rolling over his grave and bullshit like that. Who when they say shit like that, you know they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and you don't need to listen to them. So just tune them out, just like the show does. Actually, the show just makes fun of them, and that's the perfect way to deal with that. So yeah, there's a few candidates that we can talk about. Okay, yeah. So who would want to take Jen's blood? So just off the top of my head, just some candidates that we can think of. First of all, Val.
Don't call me that.
I guess could be one of those. I don't think it is. A lot of people are saying the leader. I think that is a very good possibility. If you don't know who the leader is, it's Samuel Stearns. So he was Mr. Blue in The Incredible Hulk. We last see him lying on the floor with some of Bruce's blood dripping down into an open wound into his head. And his head started expanding, and then that's where we left off with the character. That character is the leader in the comics. Sometimes Kevin Feige and other people get asked about this character, so I'm sure they haven't forgot about him, and they might have figured that She-Hulk might be the best place to reintroduce him. And that character wanting more of Bruce's blood, since he's a scientist and he's worked with Bruce's blood before. Sorry, he wants She-Hulk's blood. I think that makes perfect sense for that character. Could be General Ross. I know the actor is dead, but that character, as far as we know, is still alive in the MCU, and he turns into Red Hulk. So is there a reason why he wants to get that blood? There's also Kingpin. Now, why would Kingpin want that blood? Maybe to become stronger. I think a theory could be that, last we saw of Kingpin, it was insinuated that he died off screen with a gunshot to the head. Now, if you know about the comics, which I wasn't, I think I seen references of this, so I wasn't fully aware until Hawkeye, and then I saw references to the comics. But apparently it looks like in the comics, Kingpin survives 2 gunshot wounds to the eyes and is blinded, but then gets surgery and is able to see again. I don't know if that's a huge spoiler for the MCU, because we don't really know what the MCU is going to do, or if that's what really happened, because again, it was an off-screen gunshot. We heard the gunshot. We didn't see the character die, but we know from announcements, like press announcements and stuff like that, that Kingpin is going to return. I can't remember if they said he's going to return in Echo. I would imagine he is, but definitely for Daredevil Born Again. So we know that the character is not gone. Unless they mean he's going to show up in flashbacks. I guess that's a possibility. But it's possible that, hey, he's trying to heal himself. Maybe surgery's not an option for him to get his sight back. And for him to heal properly, he needs the She-Hulk's blood. Or maybe he just wants it for power. I really don't know. There's other possibilities too. You know, there's other villains that we know about in the MCU. There's characters that we don't know about yet. You know, they're introducing characters like this Light Elf, and who else could show up on the show that we haven't seen yet. So there's a whole wide range of possibilities. My money is on the leader. That's who I'm guessing. But it could be a out of left field character that we don't know anything about. Or I guess the other option is Titania. Like maybe Titania wants She-Hulk's blood. I'm not really too sure why. Like maybe it's just like some sort of vengeance thing. Like she wants to be able to take on She-Hulk because she feels like she was maybe embarrassed by how she was taken down so easily in that courtroom. She wants revenge. Because we haven't really seen Titania show up on the show since that last scene in the first episode. And I'm pretty sure she's been promoted as the primary villain of the show. So we're now 3 episodes in, and we haven't really seen that character outside of, you know, TV references on the news. She's a social media influencer villain. She has superpowers. She can burst through walls. She can do a flying kick on wires without wires. So I really don't know. We know from promotions and trailers and stuff like that, Daredevil is expected to show up on the show. Or at least somebody wearing a Daredevil outfit. And I have a feeling that that's going to be the least surprising cameo in the show. I just have a feeling this show is kind of like building itself to be that. Whereas, you know, Jen is looking at the camera in the beginning of the episode saying, hey, don't expect a cameo every week. Remember whose show this actually is. And I think they are focusing on She-Hulk and establishing her as a character. But I honestly think there might be a cameo every week situation. Which, again, I'm all down for. We had Moon Knight, which was complete opposite of the show. And we have She-Hulk, and I like them both for the exact opposite reasons. I think both can exist in the MCU. And I love seeing a comedy set in the MCU. Because we've seen, like, exaggerations or parodies, like The Boys and stuff like that. But having that sort of, I don't know, sort of like satirical comedy, but not really, but is actually set in the MCU. I kind of really like that idea, especially now after seeing the show. So I hope we get more of it. I don't think Deadpool is going to be that. I think we're still going to get Deadpool movies because Deadpool is a movie character. But I don't know. There's other comedic characters in Marvel Comics. I mean, we have Squirrel Girl comes to mind. We have other characters like that maybe Marvel wants to make Disney Plus series for, and they might fit in a similar kind of format. You know, not so much fourth wall breaking, but maybe self-referential humor and stuff based around what's happening in the MCU. I would love to see more of that. I get that this show is not going to be for everyone. I have a feeling that the other people on Spawn Trap, well, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I imagine that, okay, I'm calling him out here, Jordan. Jordan's not a fan of comedies, so I don't know if this show is going to be for him. But I'm enjoying it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.